welcome to another episode. Wow, I'm super excited to have Nireyal on the show. That I've been following his work for such a long time. I mean, the man needs no introduction, but I'm going to do this anyway. He's the best-selling author of Hooked and Indistractable. In Hooked, he kind of, taught people how, you can basically get hooked on products and how you can kind of increase engagement. And in Indistractable, he's kind of helping, other people understand how to kind of better control their time, control their attention, control their energy. Truly an inspiration. Neil, thank you so much for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's great to be with you.
So there's like so many questions that I have, but I actually want to start off with one kind of topic that it's talking a lot about right now: ChatGPT and AI. I don't think,
Never heard of it. What is it?
You've never heard about it, right? So, your work is really about being able to focus, being able to do deep work, being able to be in the moment, being able to prioritize things that you truly love and are important to you. ChatGPT can make it easier, but it can give probably, AI can also make it a bit more, as a distraction. What's your kind of take on AI and what we're currently seeing with ChatGPT?
So I think the world is definitely bifurcating into two kinds of people. There will be people who increasingly have their time and attention and their lives controlled and manipulated by others, and people who stand up and say, no, I will decide for myself how I will control my time, my attention, and my life because I am indistractable. So ChatGPT and large language models, this is just the evolution of the world becoming a more engaging, a more habit forming, and frankly, a better place. Like, I don't necessarily think that these things are bad. I think they're wonderful. In fact, I mean, it's amazing the technologies that we've had. And I've been saying this for well over a decade. People tend to freak out about technology, as they always have. If you go back to television, if you go back to radio, if you go back to the bicycle, if you go back all the way to the written word, all of these technologies were followed by moral panics. People saying, oh, it's rotting our brains, it's the worst thing ever. And what we do as humans, we always do the same thing. We adapt and we adopt. Right? We adapt our behaviors to make sure that we can get the best out of these technologies without letting them get the best of us. And we adopt new technologies to fix the bad aspects of the last generation of technology. Mm-hmm. So that first part, so my books try and facilitate both. The first part around helping people adapt their behaviors, that's what's Indistractable is all about. So if you don't take steps to learn this new reality of living in a world with so much abundance, with information at our fingertips, with entertainment at always a click away, if you don't know how to be indistractable, you're going to get mowed over, right? You're going to live your life regretting, why did you spend so much time on social media? Why did you watch so much television? Why did you waste your time when you could have lived your best life? And instead you didn't do that. You didn't spend your life according to your values. So we have to adapt our behaviors to this new reality, and we need to adopt new technologies to fix the last generation of technology. And that's what my first book about. That's what Hooked is about, is how can we use this psychology to make better products, right? So part of the reality of living in a world with products that are so good, that are so interesting, that are so engaging, is that we can use what Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and TikTok all taught us for good. Right? Mm-hmm. We don't have to be slaves to these technologies. We can use that same psychology to help people exercise more, to save money, to connect to loved ones by building the kind of habit forming products that aren't just about frivolity, that aren't just about entertainment, but actually help people build healthy habits in their lives. So we really can have our cake and eat it too, if we know how.
Mm-hmm. Love it. So, simple case study. Okay. So one of my friends, he's a writer. He loved both of your books. After he read, Indistractable, he basically started, managing his time through the TImeboxing technique. And he would go into, 2 hours each day of deep work, no emails, nothing. He would go all in on his work. And now there's, ChatGPT in the picture. And now he's kind of torn apart, right? Because he loves his, deep work sessions, those 2-hour deep work sessions. But now, there's basically an AI that can write the same article, mostly the same, in the same kind of quality, in 5 seconds. So like, how would you approach this kind of situation? Like, what would you advise him to do?
So I've played around with ChatGPT quite a bit, and I don't think it does the same quality. I would wonder what kind of quality writing your friend was doing. ChatGPT is really good at regurgitating what's already out there. Okay. Like what I think it makes people better writers, right? So I'll give you a perfect example. Actually, this happened last night. Okay. My daughter, she's 14 and she's taking a world history class. And she had a question that she had to answer. And the question was, why did people during the Ottoman Empire resist industrialization? Okay, by the way, this is very apropos. This is exactly what's happening right now. The answer is exactly why we're resisting technology today, funny enough. So what did she do? She went to Google and she typed in Ottoman Empire resisting industrialization. And she looked and she looked and she looked and she couldn't get any kind of definitive answer to this specific question. So it took her a long time. She got kind of hints and maybe this, maybe that. I went over to ChatGPT because I saw that she was struggling and it was getting close to bedtime. And I typed into ChatGPT exactly this. Why did people resist industrialization during the Ottoman Empire? And it gave me an answer in 3 seconds, and exactly in the format. During the Ottoman Empire, people resisted industrialization for the following 3 reasons. 1, 2, 3. Now, that's amazing, right? Like, that's wonderful, because she would have already, like, in my generation, we went to the library or we opened up an encyclopedia to get the same answer that now we can get in would take us 3 hours. For her, it took her in Google 30 minutes. Today with ChatGPT, it takes you 3 seconds. Now, that's not good writing. That's not good writing. That's regurgitation of what's already out there. Good writing is to take that plus some kind of unique insight and combine it together. For example, what ChatGPT can't do is an article that sounds like this. Here's how resisting industrialization during the Ottoman Empire is like the current struggle that we have with artificial intelligence. You see? Now that's interesting because that's blending creative thought with surprise to create something that hasn't been created before. ChatGPT does what's already been done. So we're going to see an explosion in top 5 reasons for this or how to do that. Like, if it's already on the web, these large language models, like, I don't even like calling them AI. They're not really AI. They're large language models. They look at what's already been written, what's already been done, and they predict what will come after. That's it. Like, what will come after in terms of the query. So you type in a bunch of keywords and the large language model is saying, okay, well, if you ask this, what words follow? And that's how it spits out top 3 reasons for whatever. That's a commodity now, right? If that's all you wrote as an author, like, you're kind of out of a job. But that's low value work, right? That's easy to do, to like summarize a bunch of research. The high value work will be making unique connections that have never been made before. That's the difference between knowledge or information and wisdom. So these large language models will give us knowledge. They'll give us information. They won't give us wisdom.
Neil, I'm a big fan of like the Renaissance men, right? Like, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, all those people who were able, to do so many things and also be productive, also be focused, and also, not multitask, single task one at a time, but on a lot of different big projects. And, every time, when you think about this Renaissance men, you think they've done all of that by themselves, but they've actually had like really great assistants to really help them,
Also true.
Yeah. So I think like ChatGPT, like the modern Renaissance man could use ChatGPT as, as an assistant, but you're still like the orchestrator. You're still the creator. You're still the one who actually produces the content. Do you see that the same way?
It's a great point. And it's something that today, when I write a book, I have research assistants, right? That help me with, hey, I'm exploring this. Can you go do a literature review on everything that's already been written about this topic? Well, that just got a lot cheaper for me, right? Because now I don't have to hire someone to do that. I could probably spit that out in ChatGPT. But again, if I wrote a book that simply regurgitated what had already been said about a topic, that wouldn't really be that interesting, right? It's exactly like per your model, right? If Michelangelo copied exactly somebody else's painting, it wouldn't be special, right? He absolutely did use assistants. Picasso had, all these famous artists, they all had assistants. but they had to come up with the creative idea, right? So it's going to have to look different. It's not going to be the conventional standard of work. We're going to have to add that human element. That's not going away. That's going to be that's going to stay rare.
Amazing. That's a great answer, and it actually makes me more calm and kind of more adopt oriented to what's going to happen with like AI and everything. I want to jump to my next subject: time management workflow. You've mastered it.
By the way, one additional thought I just wanted to share, just because it's top of mind. There is a world where actually this type of large language model really does help us in more ways than one, not just on the creative front, but now that I'm thinking about it, part of the problem we have in society today is that it's really hard to get a definitive answer about very much. Like if it's at all controversial, where do you go if you want to know, something conclusive around something, right? Does a ketogenic diet work? Well, you go on the internet, you have 100 people who say, oh, it totally works, and 100 people who say it don't. Like a large language model could look through all the research and say, look, we've looked at thousands of studies, and by, the consensus is X, right? So in a way, we can help all of society come to conclusions that currently, you have to be an expert. You have to be someone who does nothing but read academic papers all day long to come up with an answer. Well, it could be in the future that you could do that with a snap of a finger through an AI or through a large language model that gives you that definitive answer. So, when we talk about fake news, when we talk about misinformation, if we start believing, and this is, of course, is a whole other question, that are these large language models going to be biased? But if we assume that people trust them as not biased, there's a lot of problems it could solve on a societal level when it comes to misinformation or disinformation.
That's a great point, because right now, you're basically getting fed by who has the better SEO on Google, right? Who has the better SEO? You get that answer, right. and then it's like a snowball, and then more people think that way, so they tweet more about that, and then it becomes a real thing.
And the winner takes it all, and it stays forever, right? Like the top article on that topic stays there forever because it has more and more and more links. And so what happens if there's a brand new study that should change our thinking about conventional wisdom, but we don't see it because it doesn't rank highly because it's brand new? Right?
Wow, that's such a good point. That is such a great point. And wait, do you think like AI, how can we basically make sure that AI is not biased then?
So that's a whole nother topic, right? So we have to. So there's actually a market incentive here. If you think about it, they're saying that that OpenAI, the people who make GPT, really have a Google killer on their hands. That's why Microsoft is partnering with them to the tune of $10 billion recently announced. Because if you think about it, PageRank as the current Google system for ranking pages was great for what it was at the time, but there's going to be a whole host of queries that is not the right model for. Whereas, a large language model that is constantly updated with the latest and greatest information becomes a much better search query. So this really could be a Google killer for certain types of questions, like, what's the latest on the right, the studies around diet or exercise or anything, right? Anything that you might need to do some kind of scientific paper. Think about, medicine, for example. It's changing so quickly. How does a doctor keep up to date on what the latest research study says? They don't, right? Like, you get educated in medical school, and you almost very rarely do you change your practice based on the latest science. So there's a lot you're missing out. So I would expect to see in the future that we don't trust the doctor as the oracle of truth. We trust this large language model that's constantly updated with the latest and greatest research as that oracle.
Hopefully that'll be the case, and hopefully it won't be biased. So I do want to jump to our next topic here. Time management, workflows, super important. In Indistractable, you talk a lot about TImeboxing. And today I feel like it's harder for people to focus. This, I think everybody knows this. But I think, there's a big misconception as well. A lot of people that I see work, and we work with a tons of leading startups and everything, so we see this. They think distraction is seeing that NBA game on TV or playing that video game or doing that. But as you said, and I completely agree with you, is that distraction is the small, insignificant, work tasks that start up, taking a big chunk of people's time, like emails, texts, etc. What is your current, time management workflow looks like, and is anything changed since your last book?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So we tend to blame the pings, the dings, the rings. We tend to blame this stuff outside of us. We blame the television, we blame our boss, we blame our kids, we blame all these things as the distractions. And they can be a source of distraction. We call these things external triggers. But studies find that that's only 10% of the cause of our distractions, 10%. So what's the other 90%? 90% of the time that we get distracted, it's not because of what's happening outside of us, it's about what's happening inside of us, specifically inside our own heads. That 90% of our distractions are not external triggers, they're what's called internal triggers. What are internal triggers? Internal triggers are uncomfortable emotional states that we seek to escape. Boredom, loneliness, fatigue, uncertainty, anxiety, stress. These are these uncomfortable sensations that are the root cause of 90% of our distractions. So if we don't deal with that first, if we keep blaming the technology or the television or this or that or the other outside of us, and we don't actually look within and understand, why do I do these things, right? Why do I smoke this cigarette if I don't want to? Why do I eat the chocolate cake if I'm on a diet? Why do I scroll social media even though I said I want to do something else? Why am I working on email as opposed to making sales calls? Whatever the case might be, when you're not doing what you say you will do, 90% of the time, the problem is a feeling. It's that we don't know how to master these emotions. So step number one to becoming indistractable is to master these internal triggers, or they will become your masters. That's step number one. Step number two, in terms of my workflow, is making time for traction. So if you don't have on your calendar, what you mentioned earlier, this time box calendar, if you can't look at your calendar and know what you wanted to do with your time, you can't say you got distracted. Why? Because you can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. Okay, so really important point. You can't call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. So if you're a child or retired, you don't have to keep a calendar. But if you're a grown up and you know you're capable of more, right? If you're living a perfect life, this is not the episode for you. But if you know that you are capable of more, you could do more at work, you could exercise more, you could have closer relationships, whatever it is that you know you can do, but you're not doing. I'm telling you, big reason why you're not doing it is because you haven't planned the time. You have to turn your values into time. If you want to know what someone's values are, don't listen to what they say. Look at their calendar and look at their wallet. Look at how they spend their money and their time. Okay. So we have to plan our time by turning our values into time, making time for traction. The third step is to hack back the external triggers. Even though it's only 10% of the time, it's a bunch of very easy things that we can do, changing notification settings, making sure we change our computer desktop, simple things like that. There's also big buckets too. For example, meetings. Oh my God, how many of us, our entire day is taken up with these stupid meetings that didn't need to be called and are nothing but distractions. So I show you systematically how to work through each and every one of those external triggers so that you can hack back those external triggers. And finally, we prevent distraction with pacts. Pacts are the last line of defense, the firewall against distraction, where we make some kind of promise with ourselves or others as the last line of defense, so that worst case scenario, if the other three techniques fail, we are kept in on the task at hand. And so it's these four techniques in concert: master internal triggers, make time for traction, hack back external triggers, and prevent distraction with pacts. If you do one small thing from each of these four strategies, you will become indistractable.
The first strategy, the first technique, when you talk about like mastering your own internal, triggers and emotions, I think it's not a coincidence that that's the first one you mentioned and started to talk about, right? And I can tell you that I'm a recovering productivity tool junkie. So basically, what this means is I would basically jump from like one productivity app to the other and think, okay, I need to, improve this system. Okay, this system doesn't have a calendar, synced into it. I need to find another app. And I would just jump from one app to another And I would also like Google. I still kind of do that, but I Google like, what's Elon Musk's productivity tool? What does Jack Dorsey use? Those kind of
Yeah.
stuff. But in the end of the day, it's all me trying to escape this feeling, right? This internal, emotional trigger. So my question for you is, what are some practical things that you can do? I think meditation is probably one of them, right? Like being able to meditate. Is there anything else that you can advise to do?
Yeah, so a few things. So one, congratulations on having that insight. I think very few people are willing to be honest with themselves, right? They make up, we all do this, right? Like I wrote this book for me, by the way. I'm not preaching advice to others here. I wrote this book for me because I was incredibly distracted. It took me 5 years to write this book because I kept getting distracted while I was writing it. So it wasn't until I uncovered these techniques, right? I read through enough super boring academic studies to figure out which techniques really work and which don't, and then adopted them into my own life. And today I'm super happy to say that I am indistractable. I'm more efficient at work. I spend more quality time with my family. I'm in the best physical shape of my life, not because I'm smarter or better, but because I just do what I know I have to do. And you're absolutely right. I see this all the time. We call this productivity porn, where people will shop around for this tool and that tool. And, if only I had the right system, then I'd figured out, when, the vast majority of the time, it's in you. It's that we haven't learned how to escape this discomfort. And we're never taught this, by the way. There's no, we don't have this class in school on how to master our emotions, but it's incredibly important because it is the seat of motivation. Everything you do, all human behavior, is about a desire to escape discomfort. Even the desire to feel good, if you think about it, right? Wanting, craving, desire, lusting, all these things are psychologically destabilizing. So all human behavior is driven by a desire to escape discomfort, which means time management is pain management. Time management is pain management. And once you realize that, by the way, I would add weight management is pain management. Money management is pain management. Human behavior is pain management. And so once you realize that, these challenges, you realize, wait a minute, it's just a feeling. Okay, just a feeling, right? Like, I don't have to be a baby about it, right? Like kids, toddlers, they're ruled by their emotions, right? But as we grow up, as we mature, part of being a grown-up is we learn to handle our feelings. But it's hard work. We have to learn how to do that. And if you don't do that first, nothing else will work. I'm telling you, no tips and tricks and gurus and books and videos, none of that shit will work unless you first understand how to master your emotions. But the good news is, you don't have to meditate, right? Like, I meditated every day for 365 days. I meditated, and it was nice. It was very nice. I could see why people get into it, but it's not required. I actually don't meditate anymore. What I wanted to do is to not give people techniques that they would do outside of the moment. The reason meditation I don't think is as effective for when it comes to personal productivity is because it happens outside. It becomes like another task that I have to do. What I wanted to focus on is, hey, I have to write this blog post right now, or I have to make this sales call, or I have to do this, I have to go exercise. And right now, I don't feel like it. I can't meditate, right? Like, there's no time for that. But there's a lot of stuff you can do. Okay, there's a lot of stuff you can do. So none of these techniques require you to go visit a psychiatrist. You don't have to meditate every day. Like, that doesn't require that. I give you techniques that you can use in the moment. So for example, one technique that I use every single day is called the 10-minute rule. And this comes from acceptance and commitment therapy. The 10-minute rule says that you can give in to any distraction, okay? Whether it's, I need to work on this big project, I need to prepare this presentation, but I don't really feel like it, and you're tempted to go check email, or maybe you're on a diet and you're trying to resist that chocolate cake, or stop smoking that cigarette, whatever the case might be, you can tell yourself, look, I can give in to that distraction. I'm an adult. I can do whatever I want. I can give into it, but I choose not to right now. I'm going to give into it in 10 minutes. That's why it's called the 10-minute rule. I will give into it in 10 minutes. And so what you're doing is, if you can, and you can do anything for 10 minutes. Who can't resist a cigarette for 10 minutes? Who can't resist the chocolate cake for 10 minutes? Who can't resist checking email for 10 minutes? You can do it. So by just telling yourself, I can give in 10 minutes, and I do this, I'll set a timer on my watch and I'll wait for 10 minutes. What you will find is 9 times out of 10 that these emotions, that these uncomfortable internal triggers, they're like waves. They just crest and then they subside. And by the time those 10 minutes pass, you'll be right back at work on that task that you said you were going to do. It doesn't always work, right? I would say 9 times out of 10 it works. And if once in a while it doesn't work, fine, give in, do that distraction. But what you're going to show yourself is that you're capable of resisting temptation. That's the important thing here. You're showing yourself, you're proving to yourself that you have agency, that you really do have control. You're not controlled by the cigarette. You're not controlled by the chocolate cake. You're not controlled by whatever technology might be distracting you. So over time, you say to yourself, you know what? Last time I did 10 minutes. Let me see if I can go 12 minutes. Let me see if I can go 15 minutes. And then over time, you're building that capability to resist longer and longer. So that's just one of over a dozen techniques I talk about in the book on how to master the internal triggers.
Acceptance and commitment therapy is amazing. It's for some context for people who don't know, it's basically the third wave of CBT treatments. I am personally doing ACT for my OCD, and it's amazing. And a thing like this 10-minute rule is, it's exposure. You're exposing yourself.
Right.
You're exposing yourself to this sensation. And like you said, it's a wave. You can imagine it's a cloud, that leaves, but then you become stronger. And I imagine you wire those your brain. You wire your brain better. You optimize it, right? It's a muscle.
Yeah. It's really about belief. I mean, really what it is teaching yourself you are capable. That one of the costs of living in a society that is so affluent think about it. If you're in the industrialized world today, you're living in paradise, right? The fact is, like, kings 100, 200 years ago didn't live as well as poor people live today. When it comes to the diseases we have to suffer through, child mortality, the access to education, democracy, everything has gotten better for the vast majority of the industrialized world. And so, but the price of that, the price of all that progress is that in many ways we've gotten soft, right? We haven't been exposed to these kind of stressors. And so little things that our grandparents would say, what are you talking about? Like, I went through the Holocaust. Like, are you nuts? Right? Like, you're having trouble stopping going on TikTok? Like, shut the hell up. Like, I went to war. We don't have those problems. Thank God we don't have those problems. But that doesn't mean that they're not real problems, because in our mind, they are problems. They are stressors. They are difficult. They are painful. And the only way is to not avoid the problem. You see, most people, when they feel that discomfort, they want an escape. Give me a pill. Give me a television show. Give me something to scroll. Give me something to do so I don't have to feel that thing. But you can't go around the problem. You have to go through the problem. You have to learn how to cope with that discomfort. And that's the only way to get comfortable with discomfort.
In terms of like your personal day-to-day time management, do you try to keep it like as simple as it gets, like strictly on the calendar, everything's on Google Calendar, no apps, no different distractions?
Yeah, that's exactly what I use. I don't use any special calendaring program. In fact, I'll give you a link for the show notes. I built this very simple tool because I kept getting asked this question that you can print out or you can keep it online. It's basically a Google Doc that you can fill in your TImebox calendar. I happen to use Google Calendar because I like the fact that I can, basically put in my schedule and it's the same schedule every week. So I would say probably like 75% of my schedule doesn't change, right? When I go to the gym, when I have time to read, meals with my family, like that doesn't change from day to day or week to week. But then like when I take meetings and who I'm meeting with, that changes. So I like using that kind of tool, but that's about it.
Mm-hmm. I really want to see that link to that Google Doc. That's super interesting.
Sure, I'll send it to you.
I think another problem that I see people have right now, and they have like a to-do list. Okay, they put it on an app or whatever, or like it doesn't matter, and then they have their calendar. And like you said, they don't time box the actual tasks. So then they're basically torn between following their calendar, being distracted by emails and text, and doing that, perceived to-do list. How can you advise, like, what do you advise, people to basically combine it, right? That's like the simple answer.
Yeah. So to-do lists are terrible if you use them by themselves. And this is what most people do, right? Like they write a bunch of stuff down and that becomes their task management system, is a to-do list. And that's horrible for your personal productivity because there's no constraint with a to-do list. You can always add more and more and more. So back to our discussion around self-image and belief in your capabilities. the reason people think they're so bad at time management and why like they think, oh, they start making up these silly excuses like, oh, I have a short attention span, or I'm a Sagittarius, or whatever cockamamie the excuse they come up with, is because they use this crappy technique that day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year tells them you didn't finish what you said you're going to do. So if you put all this stuff on a to-do list and there's no constraint, right? You add more and more and more and more stuff, and then every day you come home from work and you still haven't finished everything on the list, you're reinforcing your identity as someone who doesn't finish what they said they were going to do. Loser. And so, of course, you begin to think you're broken, but you're not broken. This technique is broken. So to-do lists are a temporary repository for how you want to spend your time. But the critical word there is your time. A to-do list doesn't tell you how to spend your time. Your calendar tells you how to spend your time. So as quickly as possible, when you put things on a to-do list, and to-do lists are great for one thing, and that's getting things out of your brain and onto a piece of paper. That's very good. Get them out of your brain as quickly as possible. If you say, oh, I got to do this and this, great, put it on the to-do list. But don't leave it on the to-do list. Put it in your calendar, because if you haven't planned time for it, it's not going to get done. Because what a to-do list doesn't do, again, is give you constraints. A calendar gives you constraints. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. So having a time box calendar forces you to make these trade-offs and say, oh, I've got all these things to do. I don't have time to do all of them. What's more important? Is it more important that I do this project at work, or I spend time with my kids? Should I exercise, or should whatever it is? But you don't do that in the day. You do it in advance. Okay. So I do it a week at a time. I look at my calendar a week ahead and I say, how can I live my life in a way that I spend my time according to my values? And once you do this again, once you do it the first time, maybe it takes you 20 minutes to do it the first time. Now it takes me like 5 minutes, because my calendar, about 75% of it doesn't change from week to week. So I have my values. I have time for my family. I have time for my friends. I have time for focused work. I have time for meetings. It's all on my calendar ahead of time. So in the day, I just follow the plan, right? The plan doesn't change. I execute exactly what I say I'm going to do, because I've thought about it in advance, because that's the only way to know if I got distracted. If I didn't do what I said I was going to do, not finish, by the way, it's not about finishing. It's about doing what you said you were going to do without distraction. If I don't do that thing that's on my schedule, I got distracted. But as long as and by the way, that can include time to watch TV. It could do time for video games, whatever it is you want to do, put it on your calendar, and you will take a distraction and you will turn it into traction.
Is your whole day, your whole calendar filled with, minute by minute things? That's, you time box literally the whole day? Or is there like gaps that you live?
Well, so I don't have gaps, but I don't schedule down to, if a task takes me a few minutes, I'll budget it together. So I have time for what's called admin. So if it's, I don't know, check the mail, the physical mail, or, call the insurance company, or like silly little tasks, then I have admin time where I bucket all those little tasks together. But typically my smallest time box is about 15 or 20 minutes. But yeah, top to bottom, wake up, shower, exercise, breakfast, like the entire day, I know what I'm going to do.
Shower is labeled on the calendar. Shower and breakfast is on the calendar. Love it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Because it takes time, right? Like,
yeah, of course.
Why do I do that? Because I used to not do that, right? And then if I didn't have that time, if I didn't budget that time ahead of time, so I wanted to swim every morning. My condo complex has a pool, and I wanted to swim every morning. So I said, oh, I want to swim for this amount of time, and then breakfast, and I cook breakfast for my family. So the time I had to wake up in order to go swim, in order to make it in time for my family, didn't include a shower. So if I didn't put the shower in there, I was going to be late to my obligation to make breakfast for my family. So it sounds trivial, but it's a planning tool to make sure that what was the ultimate goal. I didn't have to put that in the calendar. I needed to actually figure out when realistically did I need to wake up in order to live out my value of physical fitness, go to the pool, and live out my value of being able to cook breakfast for my family. So that's why I have time in my calendar for shower.
Amazing. I would argue that you have access to, some of Silicon Valley's, leading tech entrepreneurs, from your work, from being in that community. Is that a common ground for all, really effective and productive CEOs out there, in your opinion?
I'm so glad you asked this, because for years, people would send me this article that Mark Andreessen, Mark Andreessen, one of the founders of A16Z.
He doesn't keep a calendar.
Founders of Netscape. He's a legend. Yes, he doesn't keep a calendar, right? And people would send me this and say like, "Oh, what are you talking about? Look, this super successful guy, Mark Andreessen, doesn't keep a calendar." And then I was so happy because about a year ago, he wrote this very now well circulated blog piece. He said that was stupid. That didn't work at all.
I
And
know.
here's my TImebox calendar. And so I share that with everybody now. When they find the old essay, I share the new essay. And I actually, in my presentations, I actually have a screenshot of Mark Andreessen's calendar, and he does the same thing. He TImeboxes.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw it like a few weeks ago, and I was like, wow, you can't escape not time boxing if you really want to get, I mean, be effective in your values.
Yeah, but and by the way, you can time box anything, right? I want you to time box leisure, right? You want to play video games, you want to hang out with your kids, you want to, you can, we call it plan spontaneity. It sounds like an oxymoron, plan spontaneity. You can plan, like with my daughter, every weekend we do something together. So I have 4 hours in my calendar on Saturdays where we're just going to be together. Like we go to the park, we go to the museum, maybe we'll get some ice cream. I don't know what we're going to do. That part is spontaneous. But why did I plan for it? Why do I need to have room in it on my calendar? Because I want to make sure there are things I don't do with that time. I'm not on my phone. I'm not checking email. I'm not looking at social media. I'm with my daughter because that's one of my values, is to be a present, available father. So I want to be fully engaged with this person that I love.
Amazing. Nina, you've been like super helpful with your time. I have just another few questions, but they're going to be a bit more personal. And I'm telling the audience right now, I'm asking these questions to Neil because like I'm basically leveraging this conversation, and I'm a big fan of Neil, so it's an opportunity for me. Are you at any all religious?
I am not religious, nor am I spiritual. I don't believe in anything supernatural.
Mm-hmm. So you basically you believe, what do you believe in? Do you believe in like humans, the science? That's kind of.
Well, so culturally, I'm Jewish. I celebrate the Jewish holidays. I think there's a lot of benefit to religious tradition and the moral lessons of religion. So I would say religiously, I'm Jewish. But one of the things I love about Judaism is that Judaism doesn't require you to believe in the supernatural, right? That nobody has a monopoly on Judaism, and so you don't have to believe in the supernatural, right? It's all about struggling with God, right? That's what I think it means to be Jewish. So yeah, but what do I personally believe in terms of things that are unknowable? I'm okay with not knowing. I think I think the human instinct, not just humans, actually, we know that animals do this as well. We look for patterns. We try and figure out how things work, and we make assumptions. We make superstitions, and I'm okay with saying, I don't know, right? Scientists are very comfortable with saying, I don't know. Religious people need faith. You need faith that this guy said, this is the way things are. You need to just believe it because you can't prove it. There's no scientific experiment that you could prove it. Whereas I'm okay with saying, if there's a scientific experiment to prove it, great. Clearly the world is round because you can go outside and do an experiment for yourself, and you'll see that there's evidence that makes you understand, hey, the world is round. This is why people have known this since the year 500. But there's some things that you just can't know, that we don't have the scientific instrumentation to know. And so instead of taking it on faith, I'm comfortable with saying, I don't know. Why do you ask?
Mm-hmm. Love it. So why am I asking? Because you're super, and it'll sound like it'll sound like maybe I'm not objective, but you're super intelligent individual. Okay, even if it's not like an ego thing, but like when people read your books, when people hear your podcast, when people hear how you're talking, yes, you're exceptional. You're not, your intelligence is on another level. And I don't think that's, it's not debatable, right? So, having a chance to talk to someone like you and ask him something like that reveals so much of, the way, how you think, and also, how a super intelligent person thinks. I'm not trying to like catalog you or like catalog other super intelligent people in the same box, but that's kind of the shtick around it.
I appreciate the compliment. I don't feel super intelligent, but thank you so much for saying that. I think I don't think I'm super intelligent. I've known people who are super intelligent, and those are the kind of people who run circles around me, and I can't keep up with them. But I think what I've done is I've made time in my life to think. If you want to know my super skill, that's it. That's it. I think a lot of people look for answers from someone, right? Like, tell me the answer, guru or leader. What should I think? And it turns out if you just make time to sit down with a pen and paper, I'm not going to say all the answers, but a lot of the answers to life's questions, to your personal problems, right? You're not going to figure out the quantum mechanics, but when it comes to things that you're struggling with, and that's why I write the books I write. I love the fact that people read my books. It's wonderful to know that it's been published in dozens of languages and sold millions of copies. That's wonderful. It makes me feel great. But I write the books for me, right? I write the books because I have a challenge. I'm struggling with something. I read other people's books on the topic and they don't fix the problem for me. And so I got to figure out for myself. And so that's why I wrote Indistractable. I was struggling with this problem. Other books that said, stop using technology. I tried it. It didn't work. I kept getting distracted. So I wanted to sit down and actually think for myself for a little bit. And it turns out if you just chew on a problem by yourself, put on some nice classical music and just think for a few minutes, you'll come up with the answers, and you can't lose. So when I write a book, I can't, to me, I write the book so that I have an answer for myself. And sometimes it sounds ridiculous if I say this out loud, but sometimes I'll actually open my own book because I forgot something that's now, it's been a while, and I forget a piece of research, and I still get distracted from time to time. That still happens to me, even though I wrote the book. But being indistractable doesn't mean you never get distracted. It means you're the kind of person who understands why they got distracted so you can do something about it. Paulo Coelho has a wonderful quote. He said, "A mistake repeated more than once is a decision. A mistake repeated more than once is a decision." And what I found was, if I kept getting distracted by the same things again and again and again, I was making a decision to be distractible, right? And I don't want to keep making that decision. How many times can we get distracted by social media before we say, do something about it? Enough already, right? We know it's going to happen. So an indistractable person says, I see what you did there. I'm not going to let it happen again. Whereas a distractible person lets themselves keep getting distracted by the same problem again. So I think this is kind of a formula for many of life's problems. If there is a problem that you keep encountering more than once, again and again, just take some time to think, right? Just by yourself. And many times, if you have the patience, right? If you have the savlanut to sit there and chew on the problem a little bit, and writing is a tool for thinking. That's really what writing is for. Even if nobody else reads it, writing, it's amazing. People who write, you can't write clearly without thinking clearly. And so many times when you write things out, you'll realize, wait a minute, that's actually just an assumption I'm making. That's not reality. That's a subjective belief. Is that real? Or am I just making this up? And then that forces you to dig deeper, deeper, deeper until you get to these truths that help you live a better, more intelligent life.
Wow. Amazing, man. Amazing. This is, Nina, you've been so, thank you so much for the time. So much value in this conversation. There's a tons of more, questions that I can ask you, but, I just want to be, you've been really helpful in your time. Neil, thank you so much for providing this value. I really encourage people who haven't read both books to read both books. If I had to recommend, I would probably advise them to start with Hooked, just so they get like the layer, right? The first layer to understand, where Indistractable is coming from. I think that's the way I kind of approached it. Do you agree? Do you agree with that notion?
Sure. So Hooked is written for people who are building products. So if you're not, designing a product, you may get less out of it. Although if you want to understand the inner workings of how products are designed to hook you, then you might find it very interesting. Whereas Indistractable is written for everyone, right? Anyone who struggles with going off track, with being distracted by one thing or another, it's written for a mass market audience.
Amazing. And just one final question. I asked it all the podcast guests. Is there anyone specific? I know we talked about, thinking for yourself, taking time to think for yourself, not just following randomly gurus or leaders, but is there anyone specific that you truly admire? Any persona that you kind of,
there's many people I admire. Well, in what field or what topic?
I mean, in terms of the way they manage their lives, if it's, you can say if it's in the time management field, if it's a researcher, or even if it's an entrepreneur that you feel that he's really, he has what it takes, to kind of live his life more intentionally.
Wow, that's a really good,
Broad.
tough question.
And a broad one.
I have to think about that one because,
Okay.
a lot of, when it comes, because with entrepreneurs, I don't, you only see the surface. You don't see what their life is like. And there's a lot of people who I admire what they accomplish, but I don't want to live their life. And I think in general, frankly, we do a little bit of too much hero worship, I think, in society in general. Everybody's got crap, right? Everybody's struggling. If you think anybody knows the answer, you're wrong. Right? Like, we're all just trying to figure it out. So I maybe I'll decline answering that question because I don't want to perpetuate that hero worship. I think the hero is you, right? The hero is each and every one of us. If we can be introspective, if we can give that time to answering our own questions and our own struggles, we'll find that there's a lot of genius within each and every one of us. And I have to thank you, Omri. You ask fantastic questions. And so I think one of your traits that I really admire is that you are inherently curious. And by the way, I do a lot of interviews. I did over 300 interviews for Indistractable. And you can always tell when someone is just going through the motions, right? When they're like, oh, here's my pre-scripted questions. I got to ask, boom, boom, boom. I can tell with you, Omri, you're genuinely curious. And I love that. You can tell that. And I think that's something I really admire about you.
Wow, thank you so much, you man. It means a lot. It really means a lot. Made my day for sure. So,
right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
All right. See you next time. Thanks again.
Bye-bye.